Welcome to the Voices of Otolaryngology podcast series, where we spotlight diverse perspectives and insights within the field of otolaryngology. I'm your host, Rahul Shah. Let's jump into it. Welcome to Voices of Otolaryngology. I'm super excited today. We have Dr. Zara Patel with us. She's going to tell her story. And as you know, I always like to say, sometimes we just get lucky. So we're lucky to have you on today. Dr. Patel, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, remember, we didn't prep you, right? Nobody gets prepped for these
I
podcasts.
am not prepped.
Okay, so the theme of today is we're going to figure out why Dr. Patel's famous. Got it? That's our theme for today.
I think
Is that
that's an
cool?
assumption.
No, it's not an assumption. Yeah, you're famous. I don't know what the millennial word is. I have teenagers and college age kids, so they use urban slang sometimes. Dr. Patel, what's your story? Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Where are you sitting? Where are you broadcasting from?
Yeah, so I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. My parents came over from India and had my sister and I. I grew up in St. Louis. I went to undergrad at Mizzou, University of Missouri, Columbia, and then I went to medical school at OHSU in Portland, Oregon, residency at Mount Sinai in New York. I did my fellowship here at Stanford. My first job after fellowship was at Emory University, and then about a decade ago, they had me come back to join the faculty here at Stanford
And fellowship was in.
in rhinology, so endoscopic sinus and skull-base surgery. And now I get to be the director of endoscopic skull-base surgery here at Stanford, and I'm the director of the Stanford Initiative to Cure Smell and Taste Loss, and I'm the director of the neuro-rhinology fellowship program.
You wear a lot of director hats.
I do.
Yeah. This is part of our WEO month, and Megan Durr's a section leader of WEO, and we want to spotlight some of our exceptional female leaders. So you should have a hat it's like girl boss, right? Or WEO
I should
boss.
have a hat like that.
Okay, I'll work on that, Dr. Patel. So if I had a finger, you crisscross the country. I mean, you've been all over.
Yes. I think that being so many different places for training has been so wonderful. You get to see so many different parts of the country and enjoy all these different cities that all have their own personalities. And then you realize that not only are the people, sort of the patients that you're seeing so different in all the different places, but the way that that medicine is practiced can be so different in these different parts of the country. And I think that's really eye-opening and wonderful for someone to get to see as part of their training, and people who only stay in one space maybe don't ever get that more global perspective.
Yeah, let's just get this out of the way because it's going to distract me the whole time. What's up with the background? It looks awesome. Did you paint that?
I wish I had painted this, but no, this is Van Gogh who painted this. Is just like a peel and stick wallpaper that makes me feel a little bit more cozy in my office.
Does it concern you that a learned person like myself doesn't recognize a Van Gogh? That's awesome.
We all have the things that we are passionate about and focus on, and art is not that for everybody, so it's okay.
So the other thing that we'll get out of the way, there's a big SNIFF back to your right, sniff, and you
Yes,
used a word that I wrote down here, cure. So
yes.
you said I'm the director of something, right? The cure, or say it again.
Stanford Initiative to Cure Smell and Taste Loss, and I really,
So it's not improve, it's not to get better, and it's an initiative. That's bold. So
it is
I
bold.
love I love the audacious thinking. It's kind of that San Francisco, Silicon Valley thinking. Why the word cure? You think in your lifetime we will cure it?
I do think that we definitely have the potential. When I first got out of training, over 15 years ago now, and I felt very confident and competent to address all the sinusitis I might see and all the sinus and skull-based tumors, I could take those out. But there's this slow trickle of patients with smell loss, and I realized as they were coming into my clinic that we really did not have anything to offer those patients almost at all at that point. And other than maybe throwing some steroids at them, there wasn't really anything. And over the course of these last 15 years, I would say I've gone from not really having anything to offer these patients to being able to bring smell back in about 50% of the patients that come to see me for their smell and taste loss. And so I think that that gives me hope. It certainly makes me understand that we still have a lot of work to do. There's still half the patients that are not improving, but going from nothing to helping about half the patients does feel like we're doing something to move the needle. And I feel like because of that, and because of all the amazing technology and innovation that I have access to here at Stanford, and the brilliant minds of other scientists and engineers that can help me, I really do think that we may get there.
But respectfully, going from 0 to 50 helping is different than 0 to 100 curing. Talk a little bit about what makes you optimistic that we can cure. I'm using your words. And how long has the institute been functioning?
So I totally agree. It is optimistic, and I do tend to have an optimistic mindset. I think it's helpful when you're doing research and taking care of patients and operating. But so the idea would be that the reason I think that we can get there is that so far, so much of our work has been done in an environment where we have known so little about the inner workings of the olfactory system in human beings. So much is assumption and extrapolation from animal models and what we learn from basic science in, a petri dish, where we're trying to grow nerves. And we're finally right at this precipice where we now are going to be able to develop tools that allow us to directly gain knowledge about what's going on at the level of the olfactory epithelium and the olfactory cortex. And that deeper understanding of what may be going on, what's the problem, and what's causing each individual's smell loss is really what gives me hope that I will then be able to turn around and specifically target each individual's problem in order to bring their smell back. I think that just our ability to work with so many other experts that are experts in these specific scientific fields is what gives me the hope that I can do that. And it's a relatively new initiative, although I've been working on this for a really long time. Maybe just in the last year or so have we actually named what we're doing.
That's terrific. You rattled off your academic pedigree a bit quick. So you went to University of Missouri Columbia for undergrad
Yes.
and then med school
Med school in Oregon, Portland,
and
Oregon, at Oregon Health and Science University.
residency.
Residency at Mount Sinai in New York.
Okay. Good. So you were literally bi-coastal, just going back and forth, right? Awesome. But that's amazing because you've seen so many different types of patients, right? You've seen rural, you've seen West Coast, East Coast. It's pretty awesome when you think of rhinology, right? On the impact. Have you ever considered that? I mean, rhinology is definitely geography dependent. Some of
It
the
is.
impact.
Yeah, and I think that so much of the discourse that happens at academic conferences, like at the Academy or at the American Rhinologic Society, or other conferences around the world, there's so much debate that goes back and forth between experts that are in different geographic
Yeah,
locations.
exactly.
I now know, only after all this time and moving around, that it's really because of where they're practicing. The idea of how someone should address allergic fungal sinusitis. My time at Emory really crystallized like how that's the majority of sinusitis that's being seen down there. It's not just once in a while, just some random, case every once in a while. And so the way in which sinusitis overall is thought about and addressed is just going to be very different than in a place like Stanford, for example, where maybe sometimes we'll see it from, agricultural workers coming up from the Central Valley for care, but it's certainly not the most common thing that we're seeing. And so the way in which we're addressing overall broadly sinusitis is just going to be very different.
It reminds me of Dr. Marple, Brad Marple, where he was in Texas with AFS. This must have been the 2000s, right? 90s to 2000s. Is that right?
Yeah, so probably something along. I don't know his trajectory that much, but yes, I think around then when he was talking about it a lot.
Exactly. Kind of figuring it out, putting it together in the right place at the right time with the right inquisitive mindset. So the reason I was asking about your academic pedigree, just answer, don't overthink this, okay? This is like one of the fun moments of the podcast. When did you first learn about the ear? Was it in residency or med school? Seriously, like, did you have a section in med school on the ear?
I don't think that we focused a whole lot.
Yeah, same.
However, when I was going through my elective, I just happened to get put on this elective in ENT. And Dr. Peter Wong was at OHSU at that time, and most of what I spent in my elective was rhinology. But I did get a few brief moments with the otologists, and so
Yeah.
I would
So
say I was exposed to the ear in
right.
medical
That
school.
was my point. I went to school at Boston University, which I love, awesome med school. But even then, I remember in anatomy, we spent like maybe 15 minutes as tokenism on the ear. It was really incredulous to me. And I knew through my older sibling, through people like Dr. Gerloni, Nabil Foulahan, who are legends about otolaryngology. But isn't that interesting? What made me think about it is smell.
Yeah.
And this is like a circuitous compliment, so bear with me. I'll compliment you in a second. But that's what it is with smell, right? We glossed over olfactory, and due to some of your work, which we're going to talk about, kudos to you. You put smell and the olfactory system forefront of media. But even with smell, right? People weren't really thinking about it. When did you start thinking about it? Was it during fellowship, residency? It's amazing career path, and you're making real contributions. But you took a road less traveled. When did you start thinking about this olfactory system as a system?
I honestly really did not start thinking about it a lot until after my training was over, and when I was out on my own, and there were these patients coming in that I realized weren't really people I had seen as part of my training, and we had never really talked about specific ways to help these patients, and then when I went to the literature, I realized there really wasn't anything that was out there other than, some steroids maybe. And so I found Professor Hummel in Dresden, Germany, who I would say is really, the guru of clinical olfaction, still to this day.
Hold on a second. So you're out of fellowship, you're a junior faculty member, right? So are we at Stanford or Emory?
I'm at Emory now.
So now we're at Emory and we do a literature search and we identify a colleague in Germany.
Yeah, it wasn't even the literature search, it was, like, globally searching, finding nothing really, and then reaching out to some people I knew who, maybe had an interest, like Eric Holbrook, for example,
Yeah.
who, had done some research in this area, and he is the one that's told me about Professor Hummel, and then I
So you
reached
just
out to
picked up the
Professor Hummel.
phone and called Germany.
I picked up the phone, called Eric, and then Eric told me about Thomas. I emailed Thomas. He invited me to come visit him and see what he was doing, and I went. And I spent some time with him. And then, I don't know, for anyone that's never visited him, it's a great experience. His uh his laboratory is in the basement level of the clinic building. He has these huge machines that are lining the wall that can bubble odorants in a very, controlled fashion, like controlling the purity and the concentration and the humidity and the flow and all this stuff so that he can
So
do these
what were you thinking when you looked
I
at
was
that? What were you
thinking that
thinking?
this is so amazing. He was experimenting with olfactory training at that time, but I also realized that this was not feasible for me to actually replicate in my own practice back home. And that's actually what led me to run the very first randomized controlled trial on olfactory training in the US, because I thought, wow, this is really interesting that we could maybe exercise the system of smell. Just like how I explain it to my patients, if they had a stroke and they lost function of their arm, you tell them to go to physical therapy and rework those synaptic connections from the muscle to the spinal cord to the brain to get that function back. And that's really what olfactory training is doing for your system of smell. But I knew that I didn't have this whole setup. So I thought, what if I just tell patients, go get your, essential oils. Doesn't matter the concentration or purity or brand. Let's see, will that work? And it did indeed show in that trial that it was just as effective.
Were people doing olfactory training at that time?
Not
Like
outside
what
of
year? What year
not
was your
outside of
clinical trial?
research settings, in Europe, basically. That year must have been, let me think back. Um, It was probably sometime around, 2014, 2015,
Okay.
something like that.
Dr. Patel, that was only 9 years ago. Don't worry, it's not. So
I'm aging so quickly.
about 9 years ago, olfactory training wasn't very popular. Was it going on in Europe?
In research settings, it was
Yeah, but not
also
at
not
scale.
like a widespread thing. I think no one Actually, it was not widespread until the pandemic hit and other otolaryngologists started searching for what can we do to help these patients with
But
smell
you
loss.
were ahead of the pandemic. You visited Germany, then you brought it back to Emory, then you launched a clinical trial on olfactory retraining.
Yes.
Would you say now it's utilized?
Oh, yeah. I think that it's probably the most widely recognized and utilized way of trying to bring smell back across the country and world at this point. There are other treatment options that have followed that we've done studies on, but some people are more familiar and some people are less familiar. I would say olfactory training is one of the treatment options that people are most familiar with now.
And can you just high level, what are the findings of your clinical trial? Durability, percent improvement? Just give us some high level stuff.
Yeah, so just a sort of brief background about all of the studies that I run, that one and all the other ones that maybe we'll talk about. Um, you have to keep in mind that people with post-viral loss or sometimes idiopathic loss tend to have some rate of spontaneous improvement, right? And so I would say a good study does not enroll patients like the week that they lost their smell because there's gonna be a lot of confounding between spontaneous improvement and actual intervention. So patients who had at least 6 months of smell loss that we trialed using olfactory training, this is basically just rotation of repeated smelling of odors in a structured smelling protocol. Uh, they had a significant improvement in their ability to, reach what we call the minimal clinically important difference on these smell testing protocols. So the UPSIT, the University of Pennsylvania Identification Test, is probably the most widely known and utilized in the US. The Sniff and Sticks is the one that is probably most widely used in Europe. And that gives a little bit more granular data. It gives us not just identification, but also threshold and discrimination data. So anyway, what in this trial, when you tested patients compared to people who are not doing the training, there was a significant improvement. However, there were two sort of components, factors that seem to predict that most, which makes sense. One is age. The older you get, the harder it is for any part of your body to regenerate, including your nerves of smell, and the duration of loss before intervention. So the sooner you can start someone on it, the more likely they will be able to bounce back.
Do you know who Osmosis Jones is?
No.
Oh, you've never heard of it? It's like a show we watched in middle school. Maybe out here in DC we watch different science things. So you were getting all like Osmosis Jones on me. You know, you're getting all
Oh,
technical
yeah.
with minimal clinical difference, but that was okay. I'm sure our members are Dr. Osmosis Jones. So it's Osmosis Jones. You should YouTube it. So you talked about a duration. How long? So obviously, you must scope these patients to make sure we're not missing a tumor. Obviously, we don't want to miss pathology. You talk to them about how long their symptoms have been there. So past 6 months. How long do you do the retraining? I'd like to use this as a forum to educate our colleagues. So I want
Mm.
them, they listen to your podcast, they see somebody in the office, and they might be able to help them. So how
Yeah.
long and rotating the essential smells, but how long and how frequent? Every day, once an hour?
So there are many different protocols out there. The protocol that I use is twice a day, every day for 6 months. And the reason so long is that we all should have 6 to 10 million neurons on either side of our nasal cavity that allow us to pick up on smells. The olfactory system, as you and hopefully everyone that's listening knows, is unique in all the other cranial nerves in that it has this inherent ability to regenerate. Each of those neurons has a life cycle that's about 3 to 4 months. Every 3 to 4 months, a neuron dies off and should be repopulated by a new one. But those are not all happening at the same time of those 6 to 10 million neurons. And so, if you're going to try to be doing this retraining and supporting this regenerative capacity and helping the system grow new nerve, then you're going to have to try to cover as many of those life cycles as possible. So 6 months is really the minimum that you would want to do. And I would say if I have patients improving at 6 months, I tell them to continue because really we only have data out to 6 months. Each time that we see an olfactory training study that studies people out longer, the longer out, the more people improve. And so I would just say keep going if it's helping you. If I have a patient that is not changed at all, I don't make them keep doing it at 6 months.
And let me be very prescriptive. How long does each session? So you do it BID for 6 months. How
Yes.
long is each session, and what can I advise my patients to smell? I'm being serious. Is it
Yeah.
coffee? Is it wine? Is it Sour Patch? What do you have them smell, and how long is each session?
So it's very fast. It's just we start with 4 odors and you just like bring it to your nose for about 15 seconds. You're breathing in and out. What's important is that people focus their memory on what that smell is supposed to smell like to them. The olfactory cortex is right next to the memory center in our brain and it is integrally connected. And we are utilizing that connectivity to bring these connections back to normal. The 4 that we start with are the ones that are most studied, and because they're in different categories of odorant. So rose, lemon, eucalyptus, clove. Uh, and we just tell them to get essential oils because if you're, picking up something in your kitchen, for example, like an orange, if you don't have the ability to smell, you really don't know when is that orange stopped smelling? When has it gone bad actually? So we don't have people do things like in real life environment. The essential oil will retain its odor for an extended period of time, and that's why we choose that. And then we do tell people at 1 month, at 3 months, they can switch up these odors because the more variety of odors you train with, the more effective the training is because you'll be stimulating different types of olfactory receptor neurons to hopefully regenerate. And there is actually good animal data now that shows repeated odor exposure is actually stimulating the basal stem cell population in the olfactory epithelium to grow more neurons.
Yeah, you keep going Osmosis Jones on me. I'm just like, come on. I'm not a rhinologist. So you rotate in 3 months. What do you switch from? So rose, lemon, eucalyptus, and clove, and then what do you
Yeah.
switch up to?
You can do there are kits out there now that have, been made on Amazon that, like, have looked at all these studies that have been done, so I would say a common one then would be something like, rosemary, tangerine, cinnamon, the 4 categories that we sort of are rotating around are floral, fruity, aromatic, and resinous. Those are kind of the categories of odorant, so if you just choose one, like sage is gonna be similar category as eucalyptus, same similar category as rosemary or basil. Resinous can be more like that clove, more like, sort of like earthy type scents. And then there's lots of floral, lots of fruity. And we just basically tell people just don't train with all floral or all fruity, because then you're not going to be stimulating that many different types of olfactory receptor neurons.
Yeah, you lost me at hello, and now I've promoted you. Now you're olfactory Patel. We don't need Osmosis Jones. We've got olfactory Patel. So did you
Sounds good.
say when I see patients, I can refer them? I don't. I mean, I own stock in Amazon, but nothing that materially changes my world. But I can refer patients to online, and they can get some of these kits. That'd be awesome.
So what I would say is the whole point of that trial that I ran back in the day was that it doesn't matter the purity and it doesn't matter the concentration, it doesn't matter the brand as long as there's a smell. I will say that these kits are charging people way more than they need to be paying. If you just get
Understood.
on
Understood.
Amazon and like got these little scents on their own, you can
Yeah.
pay pennies for them. And
Sure.
and if you wanted to refer patients to something online, there is a JAMA Otolaryngology patient education page, which is publicly accessible that I've written about olfactory training, and I've listed like 3
Great.
different options for smells, and so if they wanna just look at that and then just purchase these, like, scents on their own, that's probably the cheapest, most
Perfect.
effective, straightforward way of doing it.
In these podcasts, sometimes we're able to hyperlink, so we'll try to do that in the text. So that's fantastic. Thank you. Um, two things, and I want to keep us going here because there's a lot I want to talk about. You went olfactory Patel on me, and you said we all know that they regenerate. I didn't know that. I'm MIC board certified. So when did we learn that every 3 to 4 months the neurons can regenerate? Because you assume it's common knowledge, not
I
here.
do. I suppose that we have known
When
that
did,
a long time.
how long do you call? Because 9 years ago you started losing your memory. So 9 years ago we learned this, or is this something we've known forever?
We've known not forever, but longer than 9 years ago, we've known that the olfactory system has the ability to regenerate. However, I will say that it's not surprising that you don't know about it just because, as you mentioned about the ear in medical school, we just have not focused on smell and everything we could know about smell, in most of the training. So I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of otolaryngologists may not know that, and a lot of trainees who may be at programs where they don't have a smell expert, may not know that. And so it really is all about, you know, the exposure of thinking about smell and taste, thinking about the olfactory system. And that allows us to uncover all of this data that we have known for some time before, but maybe were not highlighted during our training.
Yeah, thank you for letting me know that I got to read the literature a bit more. So this begs the question. Some people don't have olfactory loss. They're just, I don't know what the appropriate word is, but they're not olfactory geniuses, or
Mm.
they don't have great olfaction. Can you get better? I want to be a sommelier. I want to be a wine expert. When you say retraining and you use the word muscles, that implies someone can even get better than baseline. Not retraining, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, that probably the earliest layperson's version of olfactory training is the sommelier's sort of collection, what's called the Ile de Nez. And it's basically like a
Now you're going all
collection.
French on me, olfactory
That's right.
Patel. I mean,
It's
come
it's a
on.
collection of all the different scents that you might pick up on in wine. So there's a grassy scent, there's oil,
So they're
there's
actually taught
charcoal.
that?
Yeah, so you can basically these sommeliers, when they're going through training, they train their noses to be able to understand, like, what is a grassy smell like? What is oil going to smell like? What is tar in my
So they're taught that, then they can get better.
Exactly. And do you know that, like, amazing sommeliers, I mean, certainly there is a difference, as you noted, in sort of people's baseline ability to smell. There are super smellers, just like how there are super tasters, and
Yes,
there's
exactly.
people who may not,
Yes.
have the best sense of smell to begin with.
Yeah.
And that may be due to genetics, also due to environmental factors, how much inflammation they've had in their nose throughout their lifetime. There's a lot of things that play into that. And overall, it's also true that females tend to have a more acute sense of smell than males overall, broadly, which is why we have different normative settings, what we consider normal smell on that upsit test for men versus women. And so, having said all that, if you are wanting to be able to smell a particular smell very well, yes, you can train your nose to be
Uh,
able to recognize that odor and pick up on it more readily.
yeah. I'm nodding my head like I understood, because I'm embarrassed that I don't know so much. So I did not know there were normative scales for gender. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm going to pivot to a completely different topic, but before I go there, I did my training a little bit with Dr. Poe. He would take time with this Dennis Poe at Children's Boston with pediatric ear surgery, and he spent a sabbatical time in Europe learning the eustachian tube. Some of the folks who brought functional endoscopic sinus surgery, as you know, spent sabbatical time in Germany. So you're in great company. You spent
Yeah.
time in Europe, and we're so thankful that you brought it back to America. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's wonderful, and for any trainees that are listening to sort of, have a more global perspective and see what people are doing all over the world is really helpful and informative.
Yeah, nobody ever invites me to go, so I'm glad you got to go. That's congrats on that. And you did it at an early stage in your career. There was no given. Nobody said you will be a eustachian tube expert, a fess expert, a smell expert. You just went out there. So kudos to you. So my wife is having knee problems. She's a physician, and we were looking at PRP to inject in the knee. And then I got interested in it. And then I brought her one of your studies. She's a pulmonary critical care. And she quickly reminded me the olfactory system is not the knee. But I was like, hey, it works for the nose. So you're famous for many reasons. One of them was smell, but the others for PRP and the contributions you made during COVID. Can you talk a little bit about PRP?
Yeah.
You
So
go ahead and define it for folks. I shouldn't have just used abbreviations.
yeah, that's fine. So PRP stands for platelet-rich plasma. And as you noted, it is probably most widely known about in the world of orthopedics because they've been using it the longest. It's basically drawing blood from a patient. You put it in a centrifuge, it spins really fast and separates out the components. The red cells and white cells go off, and what you're left with is this concentration of platelets in the plasma. And although many people are familiar with the clotting properties of platelets, not as many people are familiar with the fact that platelets are the ones that produce all of these really important growth factors that are always circulating in a dilute form throughout our body that our body uses to heal wounds and regenerate tissue. So if I have a cut on my hand, it's the growth factors and anti-inflammatory factors that the platelets are releasing that allow that wound to form a scab and heal over and eventually have new skin grow over in that area. And so the idea behind PRP, whether it's in orthopedics or facial aesthetics, which is used for a lot, or injecting to the scalp to regrow nerve, or in neurology, or sorry, scalp to regrow hair, or in neurology to regrow nerve, uh, the idea is that by concentrating these important growth factors and putting them right to where your body needs it most, that your body can utilize it and recreate and regenerate tissue. So that's the idea behind it. I became interested long before the pandemic, but when saw it being used in the neurology literature. I do read the neurology literature quite a lot because this is a nerve problem, the loss of smell and taste. And so I learn a lot from what they're doing there. Other studies that I've run in the past have been based off that also, like high dose omega-3, for example, and other things like that that we've realized can help patients with smell loss. But specifically PRP, I saw it being used in this carpal tunnel syndrome study that was randomizing people to surgery, like a carpal tunnel release, or physical therapy and medical therapy, or an injection of PRP in their wrist. And not only was the PRP and surgical arms significantly different and better than the medical physical therapy arm, but they were not significantly different from each other. So then I thought, wow, that's really real. That's really doing something. So I ran a pilot study. This is again before the pandemic, just to see is this safe and feasible for us to inject people in the nose? Can I numb people enough? Are they going to be able to
Yeah, so I want
tolerate
to
that?
get I want to get to the otolaryngology part. So
Yeah.
what do you do? You send a patient to a lab, spin it down, and how do you inject it? Where do you walk
We
us
don't
through what you do?
Yeah, we don't send in people to the lab. They just are in our clinic and the nurse draws the blood and we have a centrifuge right here in our clinic. And then I'm numbing up their nose. Um, The just so people know out there, I did, after the pilot study, run a randomized controlled trial showing that in COVID-19 smell loss, it has a greater than 12 times odds of improving smell versus a sham saline injection. That protocol was 3 injections separated by 2 weeks each. So that's what I tell people to do if they're gonna do it. I don't think just 1 injection is gonna be enough or do anything based on the data, so far that we have. We've also opened it up to people of all etiologies of smell loss at this point, not just COVID-19. Our long-term follow-up study a year out included other post-viral patients and COVID-19. And not only was the benefit sustained over time and didn't go back down, but it actually continued to improve in trajectory. So 15 times odds of improving smell at a year out, which makes sense when you think about the months that it's taking for all these nerves to turn over, where while that PRP
And
is,
where is that published? Because we'll put a link to it or people can refer to that. Where could they see that literature so they can learn more?
yeah, so the International Forum of Allergy and Rhinology is the journal for the American Rhinologic Society, and that's where both of the randomized control trial and the long-term follow-up study have been published.
Super, thank you. And where do you inject? And how much do you
Basically,
inject? What volume?
yeah. So the kit that we use, there's a lot of different kits out there that can come up with PRP or PRF, which is platelet-rich fibrin, and there's different components of red cells, white cells, platelets, and the kit that I've chosen to have the least amount of inflammatory cells and the most amount of platelets is from a company called M, and I've actually made a whole YouTube video about this. So if people want the logistics, they can just go to YouTube, find my video, and see that basically you draw 30 milliliters of blood, And through this process that they go through at the company and in service your nurses and how to do it, you come up with about 1 to 1.5 cc's per side. That's what you're left with after all the spinning down. So that's about what I'm injecting. In the trials, we standardized it, so it's just 1 cc per side. But now I'll just inject as much as I get for each patient, separated into two, which is anywhere between 1 and 1.5 cc's per side. And it's basically into the olfactory cleft, submucosally on the septum. You could consider injecting onto the superior turbinate also. It's just much harder to get first around the septal body or any septal deviation, and then turn the other way and inject the superior turbinate medial aspect. So injecting directly into the septum is the most practical way of doing it
Yeah,
at the
and
source.
you've learned by now, I ain't olfactory Patel, I ain't osmosis Jones. So you take your 0-degree scope and you look at skull base and you go, probably where would I find that olfactory part of the septum? I'm looking more anterior and superior. Where am I looking?
You're looking posterior and superior. So basically,
How
if you're looking
posterior?
endoscopically, yep,
Yeah.
looking endoscopically at the middle of the nose along the septum, and where basically the transition happens between your middle turbinate and the superior turbinate, that superior meatal area, that's basically the spot where your olfactory epithelium begins. From there, moving posteriorly to the face of your sphenoid, that's where all your olfactory epithelium is going to be. And so in that top, centimeter, centimeter and a half strip of mucosa along the septum, going from superior meatus back to sphenoid face, that's kind of where your trajectory is that you're aiming for.
Thank you for being so descriptive. You just do a great job. I can see why you're into art now. For
Thank
real,
you.
for real. Thank you. So when you numb it up and then you inject, that's counterintuitive because you've diluted or no, and then it bleeds. Does that wash it out? There's a lot of ways I could see this going wrong. I'm not questioning 12 to 15x. It works, but what do you wait for that? Just talk me through that.
Yeah, so when I say numb, I'm not injecting, I'm spraying. It's topical spray, like, so the same topical spray you would give anyone that you're scoping. And then again, going directly up into the olfactory cleft with the nozzle of your spray bottle and spraying directly into the olfactory cleft with both the numbing and a decongestant. That's the spray combination that we have for all of our rhinology patients. And doing that really, number one, it opens up the cleft so that you have better access, and it also numbs them up quite well. So I do the global spray and the directed spray first, then the nurse comes in to draw the blood. That takes about 20-30 minutes, and then I come back in right before I inject. I again give them one more spray. I used to soak pledgets and have that tucked into the space while they were waiting, but I've realized over time that the pressure that placing a pledget into this tiny little, in most people, 8 to 5 millimeter space, is more painful than the injection itself. And so I don't do pledgets anymore. I just do the spray, and the vast majority of people tolerate that just fine. I tell them you'll feel maybe a little pinch. You'll feel pressure in the center of your head. Some people feel pressure in other parts of their head because all those nerves are connected. But for most people, it just rapidly dissipates as soon as you're done with the
And how
injection.
about bleeding? Does it wash away your injection?
There's not a lot of bleeding, honestly, that happens. It's like
You
a
haven't seen me operate,
honeybride gauge.
Dr. Patel. Yeah, and you've numbed it up and you vasoconstricted, right.
Exactly.
Oh, kudos to you. The outcomes are awesome, and it convinced my wife to get PRP of the knee. So,
There's a lot of, questionable literature, honestly, in
yeah,
orthopedics
yeah,
and
yeah,
in
yeah,
all fields, but
yeah,
there
there
are
is.
some good
Yep,
studies that are done well.
yeah. You address that. PRP is not a panacea. The literature is one half dozen the other. It's completely split. What made you think, "Let me just try this," because it's changed our field, but what made you say, "Let me give it a shot," and not all of your patients worked, so you had to come up with twice every 2 weeks, you had to come up with 3 times, right? You had to refine your protocol. Why didn't you just give up and say, "Oh, doesn't work?"
Well, what I'll say is it was that carpal tunnel syndrome study that convinced me. When I see, I read a lot of literature, and I think that there are some very well done studies out there, and there's a lot that's unfortunately published in our scientific journals that are not very rigorously done studies. So if I see a rigorously done study that actually shows benefit from something that actually will help nerve regeneration, I'm all ears and I want to try that. And so that's what led me, to try it in the first place. Now, I'm just lucky that the protocol I chose, because there are a whole lot of different protocols out there in the different fields with PRP injections, I just chose that protocol to trial. That's just the one that worked. And so I tell my patients, I don't know, if you got more than 3, would you get even more benefit? Some people will improve dramatically after 3. Some people will just improve a little bit. And so I have had patients now that I'm not on a study protocol setting that have opted to have more than 3. And the time between, I don't know that it actually matters. I've had now, people are coming from all over the world. So if someone's coming from Japan, it's maybe not as feasible for them to come every 2 weeks, maybe once every month, it makes more sense. And I haven't seen a difference in the efficacy when we've extended that time period out. So I would just say I wouldn't do it any sooner than 2 weeks because of the time period of how it's being taken up into the cellular architecture. But it may not matter actually that we, have to do it so frequently or so soon after one after the other. But that is the data that we currently have.
Thank you. And so we're going to start wrapping up with just two more questions, but I hope people know why you're super famous now. Really helped us explore the olfactory system, smell, and think about ways, not only training, but actually procedural ways. So now we have several tools in our toolkit. Kudos to you, Dr. Patel. That's really
Thank you.
fantastic.
And I'll just put it out there for the audience. The other things that I have my patients do that you could also do: olfactory training, high volume steroid irrigation with the head in the appropriate upside down position so it actually reaches the olfactory cleft, high dose omega-3, 1,000 milligrams twice a day. That's in an endoscopic skull base surgery patient population, but it's been replicated in a COVID-19 population by my friend, Professor Hummel, and PRP. Those are all the things that I offer patients.
Very briefly, high dose steroid irrigation. Explain, what do you tell your patients? I'm not following that. Yeah.
High
What do I,
volume steroid irrigation, high dose omega-3. High
high
volume,
volume steroid.
yeah,
Yeah. Talk about that.
that's basically just in a squeeze bottle, like how you'd have anyone do a sinus rinse. With like, there's different formulations. I choose budesonide, and basically in that 8-ounce bottle of water, salt pack plus the budesonide, same thing you would do for your chronic sinusitis patients. But in smell loss patients, you need a little bit different head position, a really upside down head position to make sure that it's reaching the olfactory cleft well. Twice a
That
day, every
seems
day.
completely unnatural. So they do it in the sink or in the shower?
I tell people it's easiest over the shower or tub because you can't really get your head
Yeah.
that far upside down over the sink.
Yeah, I'm trying to think it's like this, right? I mean, you literally, yeah,
I tell
very
them
cool.
to point the top of their head to the floor.
Yeah, if I do that, I might hurt my neck. And did you try a normal position before you tried that and your data showed better with that head position?
So I would say that I just have learned that over time treating sinus patients. So we know that when people just use like this type of head position straight up and down or just a little bit to the side, we know that that rinse actually doesn't get into all the aspects of the sinonasal cavity very well. And so I've just extrapolated that to like, where do I want this to get to? And how do I need to get the head to get the rinse to that position? So
Yeah.
that's how I came to that.
When this podcast is done, I'm going to try that. I don't even think I have the coordination to put my head to the ground and do all that. Good for you. Just a couple questions. When did you graduate residency and fellowship?
I graduated fellowship in 2011.
Yeah, and residency 2010.
2010, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's absolutely remarkable in 16 years the contribution you've made to our field. What advice do you give to our trainees who are out there looking at some of their mentors and saying, wow, to stand on the shoulders of those giants are going to take me 40 years? I mean, you've had a rapid ascension. Why? I mean, how do you think you've gotten to be where you are at such a quick stage?
Thank you so much. That's so kind of you to say. I think that, it's a combination of I've had amazing mentors my entire career that have helped and supported me and encouraged me to follow whatever I'm interested and passionate about. I haven't restricted my research to areas that I was already researching with my mentors before in training or in areas that were already known to be important in the field. I just sort of had a clinical question and no answer. And so I wanted to help those patients. And so that's what took me down this trajectory. And so I would just tell everyone, follow your passion, be true to yourself, and don't just do research or not even research, but contribute to the field in ways that feel important to you, not just because someone else thinks that they're important. And I think that as long as you have great mentorship, good luck, a hard work ethic, and passion, then I don't think you can fail.
Yeah, I also think you went down a path that wasn't already taken, right? And I was being facetious about smell and olfactory system, but it was really an area that really hadn't been explored in great depth, hadn't been taken to scale, hadn't had clinical trials. I mean, you rattled off those four things, but each of those took you years to come up with. So kudos
Yeah.
to you. Kudos to you. Any final words for our members? This has been awesome getting to know you. Any final words for our members of any sort? Smell, career, WEO, anything?
Yeah, I think hopefully everyone is more interested in smell after listening to this. And, if you go to our website, the Stanford Initiative to Cure Smell and Taste Loss, all of the studies that we just talked about are linked there. All of the different treatment options and evidence that supports them. The current research that I'm doing using electrical stimulation to hopefully record from and stimulate the olfactory system is written about there. And so I hope to have more to tell you guys all about soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on Voices of Otolaryngology. This was terrific. Thank you, Dr. Patel.
Thanks so much for having me.
We hope today's episode sparked some fresh ideas. If it resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with friends. Have thoughts or suggestions? Use the feedback form in the show notes. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow us on social media for highlights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates. Thanks for listening. See you next time.